7 years ago, Emma Martin was kicked out of the only home she'd ever known, pregnant and penniless, because she dared to love someone above her station. Today, she's about to discover that the man who abandoned her never knew she was gone, and he's been searching for her ever since. Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome to Fablethorn, your home for the most incredible true-to-life stories that remind us all why we never give up on love. Whether you're part of our amazing family already, or you're discovering us for the first time, you're in for something special today. Grab your coffee, get comfortable, and prepare to have your heart completely wrecked in the best possible way. The fluorescent lights of the grocery store hummed overhead as Emma pushed her cart down the cereal aisle. Her 7-year-old twin boys, Marcus and Mason, chattering excitedly about their upcoming birthday party. She was mentally calculating her budget when she heard it, a voice that made her blood run cold. "Excuse me, ma'am, do you know where I can find the organic pasta sauce?" Emma's hands froze on the cart handle. That voice, deep, familiar, with the same gentle tone that once whispered promises in the darkness of a mansion she'd tried so hard to forget. Slowly, she turned around, and there he was, Callan Longman. Older now, broader in the shoulders, wearing an expensive suit that screamed success. But those eyes, those same warm brown eyes that had looked at her like she was his whole world. Their gazes locked across the supermarket aisle, and the world seemed to stop spinning. "Emma," he whispered, his face pale with shock. Before she could respond, before she could even process the flood of emotions crashing over her, Marcus tugged at the tall stranger's expensive jacket. "Mister, are you our daddy?" The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Callan's eyes darted between the two identical boys. Boys who had his exact same warm brown eyes, his stubborn jawline, his thick, dark hair. The grocery basket slipped from his hands, cans of soup rolling across the linoleum floor. "Oh my gosh," he breathed. "Emma, are they—" What will Emma say? And how will Callan react when he learns the truth about the sons he never knew existed? Emma's world tilted as she stared at the man who had vanished from her life without a trace. Mason, ever the bold one, stepped closer to Callan. "You look like us," he said matter-of-factly. "Mama says we look like someone special, but she won't tell us who." Emma's throat constricted. For 7 years, she'd dreamed of this moment and dreaded it in equal measure. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "Boys, go pick out a treat from the candy aisle. Stay where I can see you." As the twins ran off, chattering excitedly about their potential candy choices, Emma found herself alone with the ghosts of her past. "They're mine, aren't they?" Callan's voice cracked with emotion. Emma nodded, tears she'd held back for years finally spilling over. "Twins, born 8.5 months after your father threw us out." The pain in Callan's eyes was immediate and devastating. "Emma, I searched everywhere for you. I came back from college the moment I found out you were gone. I hired private investigators. Your father made sure we disappeared completely," Emma interrupted, her voice stronger now, fueled by years of suppressed anger. "He said you deserved better than the maid's daughter." But what happened on that fateful night 7 years ago that changed everything? You're about to discover the heartbreaking truth about the night that tore two young lovers apart forever. "Let me tell you about the last night I saw you," Emma said, her voice trembling with the weight of buried memories. It was the summer of 2016. Emma had just turned 18, and Callan was about to leave for Harvard. Their secret romance had blossomed over the years. Stolen kisses in the garden, whispered conversations through her bedroom window, love letters hidden in the old oak tree. The Longmans had thrown an elegant send-off dinner party for their son. Emma remembered serving champagne to the guests, watching Callan in his tailored suit, knowing it might be months before they saw each other again. "I waited for you in your room that night," Emma continued. "We were going to figure out how to make long-distance work, remember? You were going to tell your parents about us after you got settled at college. Callan's face crumpled with recognition. And my father found you there. Emma nodded. He walked in just as you were holding me, promising we'd be together. The look on his face. She shuddered at the memory. Pure disgust. But he said nothing. He just watched us with those cold eyes and left. I never knew, Callan whispered. He never said a word to me before I left. But he said plenty after you were gone. What devastating words did Mr. Longman use to destroy a young girl's world? The next morning, after Callan had left for Boston, Mr. Longman had summoned Emma and her mother to his study. The same mahogany-paneled room where Emma had learned to read using Callan's childhood books. Your services are no longer required, he'd said coldly to Emma's mother, who had worked faithfully for the family for 13 years. I'm giving you 2 weeks' severance pay. I expect you both gone by evening. Emma's mother had begged, tears streaming down her face. Please, Mr. Longman. Emma is starting community college in the fall. Where will we go? That's not my concern, he'd replied icily. Then he'd turned those calculating eyes on Emma. My son has a bright future ahead of him. Harvard, then law school, then taking over the family business. He doesn't need the distraction of childhood infatuation. The word infatuation had hit Emma like a slap, as if what she and Callan shared was nothing more than a passing fancy. But we love each other, Emma had whispered, finding her voice. Mr. Longman had laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. Love? You think my son could love someone like you? You're the help, Emma. Nothing more. He'll thank me for this someday. How did a mother and daughter survive with nowhere to go and almost no money? We lived in a motel for 3 weeks, Emma told Callan, her voice steady despite the tears. The sun set in on Route 9. $40 a night, and we had to choose between eating and having a roof over our heads. Callan's hands clenched into fists. Oh my gosh, Emma, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. My mother cleaned office buildings at night just so we could afford that tiny room. I worked double shifts at the diner, serving coffee to truckers for tips. We ate peanut butter sandwiches and gas station bananas for weeks. But the worst part wasn't the poverty or the uncertainty. It was the silence. No word from Callan, no way to contact him. Emma had called Harvard's main number, but they wouldn't give out student information. She'd written letters to his old address, but they came back marked, Return to Sender. And then, 4 weeks after we left, I realized I was late, Emma continued. 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test from Dollar General changed everything. Callan ran his hands through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made Emma's heart ache. If I had known, God, Emma, if I had known about the pregnancy, about what my father did, what would you have done? The question came out harsher than Emma intended. Would you have given up Harvard for a pregnant girl living in a motel? The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of what-ifs and might-have-beens. But how did Emma manage to raise twins all alone? I figured it out, Emma said simply. Because I had to. Her mother had cried when Emma told her about the pregnancy. Not from disappointment, but from fear. Fear of how they'd manage, where they'd live, how they'd survive. But Emma had felt something else entirely. Determination. She'd found them a small apartment above a bakery, worked 3 jobs while pregnant, and saved every penny she could. When the twins were born, Marcus at 6:47 p.m. and Mason 3 minutes later, Emma had held them in the hospital room her mother had somehow managed to pay for and made them a promise. I promised them they'd never want for love, Emma said, watching her boys compare candy bars in the next aisle. That they'd grow up knowing they were wanted, even if their father didn't know they existed. I went to night school when they were toddlers, got my GED, then my associate's degree in business. I manage the accounts for 3 local businesses now. We have a small house with a yard where they can play soccer. Callan stared at her with something that looked like awe. You did all that alone? Not alone, Emma corrected, glancing at her mother, who was approaching with a concerned expression. We did it together. But what happened when the past finally caught up with the present? I never stopped looking for you, Callan said urgently. Emma, you have to believe that. The day I came home for Thanksgiving and found out you were gone, I went insane. I confronted my father, but he said you'd quit and left no forwarding address. He'd hired private investigators during his sophomore year, using money from his trust fund. But Emma Martinez was a common name, and without more information, the trail had gone cold. I graduated law school, but I couldn't focus. I'd see a woman with your hair color on the street and follow her for blocks, hoping it was you. I never stopped hoping I'd find you. Emma's mother reached them, immediately recognizing Callan despite the years that had passed. Her expression was guarded, protective. Mrs. Martinez, Callan said softly, I'm so sorry for what my family did to you. Sorry doesn't pay rent, she replied curtly, but Emma could see the old affection in her eyes. She'd loved Callan like a son once. Marcus came running back, Mason close behind, each clutching a candy bar. Mama, who's this man? He keeps staring at us, Marcus said, eyeing Callan with curiosity. Emma knelt down to her son's level. Boys, this is Callan. He's an old friend. Are you really our daddy? Mason asked again, his 7-year-old directness cutting through all the adult complexity. How do you explain 7 years of absence to children who've only known questions? Callan knelt down too, bringing himself to the boy's eye level. Emma watched, her heart hammering as he studied their faces, faces that were mirror images of his own childhood photos. What do you think? He asked them gently. Marcus tilted his head, considering. You have our eyes, and Mama gets sad when she looks at old pictures sometimes. Are you in those pictures? Emma's breath caught. She'd been so careful to hide any evidence of Callan, but children noticed everything. I might be, Callan said softly. Would that be okay with you? Mason stepped closer, bold as always. If you're our daddy, where have you been? Mama said you were away, but Kevin's daddy was away in the army and he still called every day. The innocent question hung in the air like an indictment. Emma saw Callan's jaw tighten with emotion. I was away, and I didn't know how to find you, he said honestly. But I've been looking for you every single day. Every day? Marcus asked, wide-eyed. Every single day. Emma felt something crack open in her chest. 7 years of protective walls crumbling in the face of Callan's obvious love for children he'd just discovered. But can 7 years of hurt and separation really be healed in a grocery store aisle? We should probably take this conversation somewhere more private, Emma's mother suggested, glancing around at the other shoppers who were starting to stare. Callan nodded immediately. Of course. Could we maybe get coffee? Or dinner? I know this is overwhelming, but I have so many questions and He stopped himself, looking directly at Emma. Only if you want to. I don't want to push. Emma looked at her boys, who were watching this adult drama unfold with the fascination children reserved for potential life changes. Please, Mama, Marcus asked. He seems nice, and he has our eyes. 7 years of carefully built independence warred with the part of Emma that had never stopped loving Callan Longman. 7 years of being strong, of making decisions alone, of protecting her heart and her children. But looking at Callan now, seeing the genuine anguish in his face, the immediate love he'd shown her sons, she felt her resolve wavering. Okay, she said quietly, but not tonight. Tomorrow is Saturday. If you want to meet us at Central Park at 2 o'clock, we'll be there. Callan's smile was like sunrise after the longest night. I'll be there. I'll be anywhere you want me to be. What secrets will be revealed when they finally have time to really talk? Mid-retention reminder. Emma's about to discover something that will change everything she thought she knew about why Callan never found her. Central Park was Emma's safe place. She'd brought the boys here every Saturday for 3 years, watching them play on the swings while she graded papers for her online college courses. It felt right to meet Callan here, in this space that belonged to her and her sons. He was waiting by the fountain when they arrived, wearing jeans and a sweater that made him look more like the boy she'd fallen in love with, and less like the successful lawyer he'd become. He'd brought a soccer ball. "I wasn't sure what 7-year-olds like," he admitted, holding up the ball. "Soccer!" both boys shouted in unison, immediately warming to this stranger who might be their father. As the twins ran ahead to find an open space to play, Emma and Callan walked slowly behind them, the weight of 7 years heavy between them. "I need you to know something," Callan said suddenly, "about why I never found you. It's not an excuse, but my father did more than just fire your mother." Emma's steps faltered. "What do you mean?" "He told me you'd taken money from his safe and disappeared. He said you'd left a note saying you never wanted to see me again, that everything between us had been a game to you." The world tilted. Emma grabbed Callan's arm for support. "He showed me a letter," Callan continued, his voice thick with old pain. "In your handwriting. It said you'd realized I was just a rich boy playing at Rebellion, and you wanted to make something of yourself without the burden of our childhood fantasy." How far had Mr. Longman gone to keep them apart? Emma stared at Callan in horror. "I never wrote any letter. I would never have—" "I know that now," he said quickly. "I should have known it then, but I was 18, devastated, and my father seemed so sure. He kept saying he was protecting me from being taken advantage of." They sat down on a bench while the boys kicked the soccer ball back and forth, their laughter carrying on the afternoon breeze. "He forged my handwriting?" Emma asked, still trying to process the depth of his father's deception. "He must have. You wrote me so many notes over the years, hid them in our tree. He could have copied your style easily." Callan's hands were shaking slightly. "Emma, I grieved you like you were dead. I thought you'd played me for a fool, but I couldn't stop loving you anyway." The cruelty of it took Emma's breath away. Mr. Longman hadn't just separated them. He'd made sure they both carried the poison of believing the other had chosen to leave. "I kept hoping you'd come back," Emma whispered. "Even after I found out I was pregnant, I kept thinking maybe you'd remember our promises, remember what we had." "I did remember, every day, but I thought you'd made it clear that none of it had been real for you." Marcus came running over, the soccer ball under his arm. "Dad, Callan, can you show us how to do that trick where you bounce the ball on your knee?" The casual way Marcus had started to say "Dad" hit both adults like lightning. How long would it take for wounds this deep to heal? Over the next 2 hours, Emma watched Callan with her sons and felt her heart breaking and mending all at once. He was patient with Mason's endless questions, gentle when Marcus scraped his knee, and completely natural in a way that spoke to something deeper than conscious effort. "He's good with them," Emma's mother observed. She'd been quiet most of the afternoon, watching with the protective eye of a woman who'd helped raise these boys from birth. "He always wanted to be a father," Emma replied softly. "Even when we were teenagers, he used to talk about having kids someday." When the boys finally wore themselves out, they sprawled on the grass between Emma and Callan, still chattering about soccer and school, and whether Callan knew how to make pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. "I need to ask you something," Emma said when the boys had quieted down, focusing on picking dandelions. "What do you want from this? From us?" Callan was quiet for a long moment. "I want to know my sons," he said finally. "I want to be their father if they'll have me. And I want—" He looked at Emma with an expression that was achingly familiar. "I want to know if there's any part of you that could forgive me for believing the worst of you." There's nothing to forgive, Emma said. We were both victims of your father's manipulation. But there's something else, Callan continued. I need you to know. I never married Emma. I never even got close. I kept comparing every woman I met to a memory of you. What will Emma's answer mean for their future? I dated a little, Emma admitted. But it never felt right. The boys would ask about their father, and I'd tell them he was someone special who loved them but couldn't be with us. I never wanted them to think they weren't wanted. She'd had offers over the years. Good men who would have loved her and the boys. But Emma had learned to be complete on her own, and she wouldn't settle for anything less than the all-consuming love she'd once shared with Callan. They're amazing kids, Callan said, watching Marcus show Mason how to make a dandelion chain. You raised them beautifully. We raised them, Emma corrected, glancing at her mother. It took all of us. As the afternoon sun began to slant lower, casting long shadows across the park, Mason climbed into Emma's lap while Marcus leaned against Callan's shoulder as naturally as if he'd been doing it his whole life. Are you going to disappear again? Marcus asked suddenly, his 7-year-old intuition cutting straight to the heart of Emma's fears. Never, Callan said firmly. If your mama says it's okay, I want to be part of your lives every day from now on. 2 pairs of brown eyes turned to Emma expectantly. What choice will Emma make? And will it lead to the happy ending they all deserve? It's not that simple, Emma said carefully. We have to take this slow, for everyone's sake. She'd spent 7 years building a life that worked, creating stability for her sons, learning to be strong and independent. She couldn't just flip a switch and go back to being the 18-year-old girl who'd believed love could conquer everything. I understand, Callan said. I want to earn my place in their lives. In your life, if you'll let me. Over the following weeks, they began the delicate process of building a relationship from the ashes of their past. Callan started with Saturday visits, then added Wednesday dinners. He helped with homework, came to soccer games, and slowly became the father the boys had always wondered about. Emma watched it all with a mixture of joy and terror. It was too good to be true. And she'd learned that when things seemed too good to be true, they usually were. The breakthrough came on a rainy Thursday evening when Marcus came down with a fever. Emma was at work, her mother was at her own job, and the babysitter had canceled. Without hesitation, Callan left his law office in the middle of an important meeting to take Marcus to urgent care. When Emma arrived at the clinic, she found Callan in the waiting room with both boys. Marcus curled up against his chest, Mason reading him a picture book. Thank you, she whispered, and meant it with every fiber of her being. But their happiness was about to face its biggest test yet. The confrontation Emma had been dreading came 6 weeks after that first meeting in the grocery store. Callan's parents requested a meeting, demanded it really, when they learned their son had been spending time with the maid's daughter and the grandchildren they'd never known existed. I want you to meet them, Callan told Emma one evening after the boys were in bed. I want them to see what they threw away, what they kept from me. Emma's first instinct was to refuse. The Longmans had already proven they could destroy her life once. But she thought about Marcus and Mason, about the legacy of shame and secrets she didn't want to pass on to them. Okay, she said, but we do this on neutral ground, and the boys stay home until we see how this goes. They met at an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place Emma would never have been comfortable in at 18, but where she now walked with the quiet confidence of a woman who'd earned her place in the world. Mr. and Mrs. Longman were older, grayer, but their cold elegance hadn't dimmed. They looked at Emma with the same barely concealed disdain they'd shown 7 years earlier. So, Mr. Longman said without preamble, you've managed to trap my son after all. Would Emma find the strength to stand up to the people who had once made her feel worthless? The Emma who sat across from the Longmans was not the frightened 18-year-old they'd banished 7 years ago. This Emma had survived poverty, raised 2 children alone, put herself through school, and built a successful career. This Emma had nothing left to lose and everything to protect. "I didn't trap anyone," she said calmly. "Your son found us by accident, and he chose to stay." Mrs. Longman spoke for the first time, her voice icy with disapproval. "You kept his children from him. You robbed him of 7 years with his sons." The accusation hit like a physical blow, but Emma didn't flinch. "I kept them safe," she replied, "from a family that would have seen them as an embarrassment, a mistake to be hidden away." "You have no idea what we would have," Mr. Longman started. "Don't I?" Emma interrupted, her voice rising slightly. "You threw out a pregnant teenager and her mother with nowhere to go. You forged a letter to make your son believe I'd abandoned him. You destroyed 2 families because you couldn't stand the idea of your son loving someone beneath your social class." Callan reached for Emma's hand under the table, and she drew strength from his touch. "The boys exist," she continued. "They're 7 years old. They're brilliant and kind and funny, and they're your grandchildren, whether you acknowledge it or not. The question is, what kind of grandparents do you want to be?" How would the Longmans respond to Emma's challenge? For a long moment, silence stretched across the restaurant table. Emma watched emotions play across Mrs. Longman's face. Surprise, shame, and something that might have been regret. It was Mrs. Longman who broke first. "May I see their pictures?" she asked quietly. Emma hesitated, then pulled out her phone. She scrolled to a recent photo of Marcus and Mason at their 7th birthday party. Chocolate cake smeared across their grinning faces, soccer jerseys wrinkled from play. Mrs. Longman's breath caught. "They look exactly like Callan did at that age." "They have his eyes," Emma said softly. "His stubborn streak, too." "And your spirit, I'd imagine," Mrs. Longman said, looking at Emma with new respect. Mr. Longman cleared his throat, clearly struggling. We may have acted hastily 7 years ago." "Hastily?" Callan's voice was dangerously quiet. "Dad, you destroyed the woman I loved. You kept me from my children. We were wrong." The words fell into the silence like stones into still water. Mr. Longman looked older suddenly, diminished. "We were wrong," he repeated. "About Emma. About what was best for you. About everything." Could these simple words really begin to heal 7 years of damage? "I need you to understand something," Emma said, her voice steady. "I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need your money or your acceptance. I've built a good life for myself and my sons." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "But Marcus and Mason deserve to know all of their family, if that family can love and accept them unconditionally. Can you do that?" Mrs. Longman nodded, tears in her eyes. "We'd like to try, if you'll let us." The conversation that followed wasn't easy. There were hard truths to face, apologies to be made, and trust to be rebuilt from nothing. But for the first time in 7 years, Emma felt like the future held infinite possibilities. 2 months later, she stood in the backyard of the small house she'd worked so hard to buy, watching Callan push Marcus and Mason on the tire swing he'd hung from the old oak tree. Her mother sat on the porch with Mrs. Longman, both grandmothers laughing at something one of the boys had said. Mr. Longman approached Emma, carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For raising them well. For being strong enough to survive what we did to you. For giving us a chance to be better than we were." Emma accepted the lemonade and watched her sons play with their father. A father who now coached their soccer team, helped with homework every night, and tucked them in with stories about brave knights and clever princesses. But what about Emma and Callan? Could they find their way back to each other after everything that had happened? That evening, after the boys were asleep and Emma's mother had gone home, Emma and Callan sat on the porch swing they'd installed together the week before. "I have something for you," Callan said, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. Emma unfolded it and gasped. It was one of the love notes she'd hidden in their oak tree at the mansion, all those years ago. The paper was yellowed with age, but her teenage handwriting was still clear. "See, no matter what happens, no matter how far apart we are, remember that I love you with everything I have. Forever and always. E double quote." "I kept it all these years," Callan said softly. "Even when I thought you'd betrayed me, I couldn't throw it away." Emma traced the words with her finger, remembering the girl who'd written them. So young, so sure that love could conquer anything. "Do you still mean it?" Callan asked. Emma looked at him. Really looked at him. 7 years had changed them both. They weren't the desperate teenagers who'd clung to each other in secret. They were adults now, with scars and wisdom and a deeper understanding of what love really meant. "Yes," she said. "But we're different people now, Callan. I'm not the girl who needed rescuing anymore. And I'm not the boy who thought love was enough without action to back it up," he replied. "We've both grown up." Could their love grow up with them? 3 months later, Emma walked across the stage at the community college graduation ceremony, her cap and gown rustling as she accepted her bachelor's degree in business administration. She'd finished the program she'd started 7 years ago, working nights and weekends while raising her sons. In the audience, Callan cheered loudly, holding Marcus on his shoulders while Mason waved a homemade sign that read, "We love you, Mama." Emma's mother wiped proud tears from her eyes, sitting next to the Longmans, who had become doting grandparents in the months since their reconciliation. At the celebration dinner afterwards, Callan stood up, his hands shaking slightly. "Emma," he said, "you're the strongest person I know. You built an amazing life for yourself and our boys, and you did it all without needing anyone else to make it happen." He dropped to one knee beside her chair, pulling out a simple, elegant ring. "But maybe you'd want someone to share that life with? Not because you need rescuing, but because we're better together than we are apart?" The restaurant went quiet around them, but Emma only had eyes for Callan and for her sons, who were bouncing excitedly in their chairs. "Say yes, Mama," Marcus shouted. "We already talked about it, and we want Callan to be our official dad." What will Emma's answer be? Emma looked at the ring. Not ostentatious or overwhelming, but perfect in its simplicity. She looked at her sons, who were practically vibrating with excitement. She looked at her mother, whose eyes were shining with happiness. And finally, she looked at Callan, the boy who'd become a man, the man who'd fought to find his way back to her. "Yes," she said, and the word felt like coming home. The ring slid onto her finger perfectly, and suddenly she was surrounded by everyone she loved. Callan's arms around her, the boys climbing into her lap, her mother crying happy tears, and even the Longman smiling with genuine warmth. But the best part came later, when they were all back at Emma's house. Their house now. And Marcus tugged at Callan's shirt. "Dad," he said, the word natural now after months of practice, "will you tell us the story about how you and Mama fell in love?" Callan looked at Emma, and in his eyes she saw their whole story. The mansion where they'd grown up together, the secret love they'd shared, the years of separation, the miracle of finding each other again, and all the beautiful tomorrows stretching out ahead of them. "It's a long story," he said, settling onto the couch with a boy on each side and Emma curled against his shoulder. "We have time," Mason said sleepily. And they did. They had all the time in the world. Emma's story reminds us that sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about never being apart. They're about finding your way back to each other, stronger and wiser than before. True love doesn't just survive the storms, it learns to dance in the rain. If this story gave you chills, made you tear up, or had you rooting for Emma from the very first minute, do me a huge favor. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Share your thoughts in the comments. I pour my heart into finding and crafting stories that matter. Stories that remind us all that love wins, strength grows, and second chances are real. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to share the next incredible journey with you. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 13. And now abideth faith, hope, love, these three. But the greatest of these is love.